I remember when I first saw the movies, I started really I was young, but I started like, "This is dumb. What is this?" Like, the beginning, where they're trying to set up the story, I was so lost just in that. I'm like, "This is kinda ridiculous that they're expecting me to keep up with this if I've never read the books." By the end of the trilogy, I was in love. Um, so but even though I was in love, I was frustrated because we get to the end, and I was thinking of it totally in my young mind, not in religious terms. And Frodo gets there and he's ready to throw it in, and then he fails. And I was really irritated by that. I was like, "What again? What a dumb like. How could Tolkien do that? How could he?" So I went to a men's group at my parish, and we were all sitting around at dinner one night on the during this retreat, a men's retreat, and I brought it up because we were talking about films, and a buddy of mine who taught religion at a Catholic high school said, "Oh, you know that that's a representation of man's inability to save himself, right?" It's like, and that's when it clicked. I'm like, "Whoa, this is." I didn't know much of anything, and I think I was coming from, you could say, like the general public perspective of Lord of the Rings. It really moved me, even the films, they really moved me. There was something incredible there, like what you noticed about them too. Um, but I had no idea what it was, and that was the spark. And from there, picking up, now it's like for Catholics especially, it's like this ripe fruit you can pick from and just discover all these truths, virtues, symbolism. So, what are some of the virtues that God, through Tolkien, infused into the story that anybody should notice? Because I bet you 98% of it's missed by the general public. So what are some of the core Catholic virtues in this story that you would point out?
Yeah, well, that's great, and I think we should begin where you've just left off, because that climactic moment on Mount Doom is crucial, and I use the word crucial here actually in terms of Latin etymology, the roots of the word. Crucial, of course, means crux, which means cross. So there's a connection between what happens at Mount Doom and the crucifixion. But let me just explain. This is why it's on March 25th, Good Friday. But Frodo is not a Christ figure like Aslan is a Christ figure. He's a simple hobbit, but we are called to be like Christ, right? We are called to take up our cross and follow him in his footsteps. But we can't do that unless he helps us, right? This is the whole grace. So, like you, when I first read The Lord of the Rings, and I think this is true of everybody, well, not many people, probably most people, you read The Lord of the Rings, and you've read 800 or 900 pages by the time you get to the cracks of doom, right? And most of it at walking pace. Tolkien does not rush, and that's one of the beauties of it. We have to be patient. We have to also be perambulating. We have to be walking with him, right? We're not no car chases, not rush, plenty of action scenes, fights, but um, so we get there, 850 or so pages, whatever it is, and then this is the easy part. All that Frodo has to do now is just to throw the ring into the cracks of doom, and he refuses, right? And that's the point at which we get angry. First of all, with Frodo, because he's a miserable loser. He's let us down. He's betrayed us. We've invested so much of ourselves into him and his quest, and he fails right at the crucial moment. Um, but then and this is our first education in literary criticism, because then we realize, hang on a second, it's not poor Frodo's fault. Poor Frodo had no choice. It's Tolkien's fault, right? Tolkien made him fail, right? And then you think, well, Tolkien's a miserable loser. How dare you do that? And then you think, well, hang on, Tolkien's not stupid, right? What's going on here, right? And then you start going deeper, and then you realize that right at the beginning, towards the beginning of the story, Frodo says to Gandalf, I wish Uncle Bilbo had killed that miserable creature when he had the chance. It's a pity that he didn't. And Gandalf says, Pity? It was pity that stayed his hand. And then later on, Frodo has the opportunity to have Gollum killed at the Forbidden Pool, and he stays the hand of those about to shoot the arrow at Gollum, say, "Now I do see him, I do pity him." And then later in the story, much later, that Sam himself has the opportunity to kill Gollum, and he also pities him. So on three separate occasions, three separate hobbits that are nonetheless connected together in the same quest with respect to the ring, uh, pass the most difficult test that any of us are asked to pass as Christians, and that's to obey that most difficult commandments to love our enemy. If Bilbo had not loved his enemy, Gollum would have uh, been killed. If Frodo had not loved his enemy, Gollum would have been killed. If Sam had not loved his enemy, Gollum would have been killed. In any of those scenarios, Gollum would not have been there at the end, and the quest would have failed. But the quest succeeded as a providential consequence of the love of the hobbits for their enemy. So that all of a sudden you realize, that this is something majestic and beautiful, but it also, and as your friend said, it also shows that we cannot destroy the power of evil through the triumph of our own will. And that's the Nazis, the triumph of the will. It's Nietzsche, the triumph of the will. That it's all about will, and we can do what we want. We can become supermen. No, we cannot become supermen. We can become super tyrants. We can become super cruel, but if we want to actually grow in virtue and wisdom, we have to have humility, and humility includes being on our knees and realizing we can't actually defeat the power of Satan, the power of evil, the demonic presence in the cosmos, the power of Sauron, the power of the orcs, the Balrogs. We can't defeat any of those without a supernatural assistance. And that's what that shows at the end. It's God who delivers Frodo, not Frodo who delivers Frodo.
Want to thank you for your time and for listening. If you liked the conversation, please follow, subscribe, like, all that good stuff, and share it. Share this conversation with others in hopes that any fruit from it might be given to others. Thanks. God bless.